Hello, my friends. I just got out to my car. I did a broadcast with Andrew Wommack, and whole hour. I'm going to try to post it for you because we know he's delightful. He gets right into there. And I thought, let me just go back and talk to the folks for a minute about what's happening. The most interesting story that's going on is the shooting of a Patriot Prayer Trump supporter in Seattle. And the guy was telling me that the people actually were rejoicing when they did this. This is such a demonic spirit that's taking a position in the minds of people that are against Trump, against you, against me. The Republican acceptance speech by Trump the other night was so beautiful and brilliant with the beautiful fireworks going off. And then I talked to friends of mine that were there walking out, and they said that the demonic assault that they went through outdoors, one of them very courageously, Pastor Ramiro Pena, actually went out and prayed the night before while the protesters, the agitators, were there. He just kind of dressed down and walked around the circumference of the White House and prayed. And he just said, he just waved at them and stuff. So they thought he was one of them. He just went and prayed. So the next night when he came out, it was he never seen such unbridled demonic rage. And then the strange thing is that all the guys at the hotels, they said that these folks were flown in because they were flying out the next day. This is one of the things we're going to have to pray for, is the exposure of the infrastructure of evil. I don't know why we haven't done this earlier. If we did 1 month of Mueller probe, forget 2 years, on the infrastructure of funding and organization behind this, then I think we would be doing a vast service for America's Christians and citizens are saying, how can this be allowed to happen? How can this continue? We didn't think that this was possible to have this level of sustained. I mean, imagine if you had a group of conservatives that were tearing apart, burning, torching, harassing after the Democrat convention. I mean, their own convention, that bizarre ending they had there. It looked like it was in a Walmart parking lot with all these cars and stuff. I don't know what they're socially distancing in their cars, something which I'm not even sure that some mayors allow Christians to do in a parking lot for church on Sunday. But the weird part for me is the fact that none of this, it's like there's such an unrighteousness in the mind control of the left, because I'm not hearing a thing about how come there was not any harassment, abuse, and threats, and harm done to anybody at a Democratic convention, but they could do it to conservatives and Republicans. And I think they're trying to bait the president. I think they're trying to bait conservatives into a wrong response, and it's really unrighteous, because what you have is thousands of people with these. They're activists, they're paid, and they're filming, they're broadcasting, they're recording so that they could use it as footage, because they really want race wars in the United States. It's an evil thing. They've declared war on anyone who doesn't submit to them. This, by the way, is the foretaste of what goes on in totalitarian regimes or in Marxist revolutions, where you're afraid. And of course, then if you try to organize a response immediately, I mean, here's an unarmed prayer guy who's killed in Seattle, and the left-wing narrative is this is a white, racist militia person, because they really want that. They want to see violence. They want to see some pushback so they can create the narrative that there's this fictitious white supremacist manifestation, which has not happened. And if it was to manifest, they'd have a hard time trying to find more than one nut doing it. They move in thousands. But what I'm saying is we have to pray for an extraordinary grace for restraint and self-control among those that are being bullied, intimidated, harassed, and threatened, and that the evil of this will be unmasked. And there's a verse in the Bible that says that evil men and seducers shall wax worse and worse, deceiving and being deceived. And I believe that what you're seeing is in the insidious price that people pay in politics and media and activism is that when they suppress the truth and they eagerly run to a lie and they begin to teach the lie, even though they know it's not true, they begin to believe the lie. And so the judgment of God, according to the Bible, is that those that engage with suppressing the truth and unrighteousness actually begin to believe the lies that they're saying. And the next thing you know, it went from being a political tool to power to becoming their actual belief system. And where's this going? Well, there is a backlash that is forming. And, when you bend something at a certain point, it either breaks or it comes back. And what we're seeing is a lot of people are being intimidated and broken because they're afraid and they're being manipulated by the intimidation. But on the other hand, there's a groundswell of energy that is right now coming together and saying, wait, this is evil at a level that is being unmasked. It's being exposed. And I think it's going to get clearer and clearer and clearer. But we're not going to get suckered into the response that the devil wants. And we're going to continue to pray that the mercy of God will be on the United States, that the restraining mercy of God will be on the United States. And when I say restraining, that God will expose the works of darkness. The hidden works will become exposed. That there will be a rising up in unity at a higher level than ever before. We have some 30 or 40 million Christians that aren't registered to vote. They don't vote, they don't care, they're focused on the rapture, the end times, they don't think politics makes a difference or whatever. You will find them among you. And I want to say something. I don't care if you're in a state which is overwhelmingly always going to be Democrat. You could be in California. Well, my vote doesn't make a difference. Your vote is a seed that you plant in the ground by faith for the future. The Polish people lived under the oppression of the Soviet Union and atheism. They were locked up, tortured. There was hundreds of thousands of priests and Christians that were killed during the Soviet dominance of Eastern Europe. But they planted the seed in the ground. And then in one moment, it was like it was in the 1970s when the Pope, might be 79, when the Pope, newly elected Pope from Poland, went to Poland, went to Krakow, and he started to proclaim that the politicians may reject Christianity. The politicians may reject Christ. The government, atheists, can reject Christ, but they cannot actually succeed in removing him because Christ, being risen from the dead, is defining them in history. And that Christ cannot be removed even though they are agnostic or atheists, that he is the God of history and that Poland belongs to him. And suddenly there was a million voices, that a million people showed up. It was shocking to the communists. But they said, we want God. We want God. We want God. And at that moment, many historians believe that though it would take another 10 years for communism, for Soviet Union to collapse and release Poland, at that moment, the actual collapse happened, when that cry of "we want God" came up. So we're covering all that stuff in our Chaos Code. The book is now available, God's Chaos Code. I don't know if it's backwards for you or not. It probably is. But God's Chaos Code is out. You can go and order at godschaoscode.com, because we are going to be seeing the rising up, the backlash, the pushback on the devil's grasp. And it's not just in the United States, it's China. It's China throughout the Asia-Pacific Rim. It's in Europe with the EU and with the World Economic Forum, and how they are really planning on taking advantage of the COVID economic unraveling in order to jam up Europe with a new currency, or not with a new currency, but with a new economic order, and to bring the rest of the world in with them. These very arrogant, very powerful multi-billionaires and elites that make up the Davos crowd have plans for how they're going to be doing a new economic order. It's going to affect the United States. We believe that the mercy of God is upon this president and this administration, and that it's going to take a divine act of God. I know the prophecy, the Covington prophecy. You look at the anarchy that's out there, and you can imagine where America will go if we don't have God's intervention. We certainly know that there are not that many Republicans that have the will to stand up. Democrats are all in lockstep with each other. And in the midst of the chaos, there's a code. And the code says that when Cyrus came, God said, I'm going to release a decree. And the decree was for the house to be built. God's house for the nation. And if you want to know what's happening right now, it's the awakening has already begun. Christians have already awakened. They've awakened to the danger. We prefer to awaken to an ecstatic revival where we fall down and have glory bumps. But an awakening is just as real if it's the awakening that came in the day of Cyrus, which was Cyrus released a decree. The Jews went back to their city, Jerusalem, and they started building. They didn't finish. They got distracted. And I really believe that we have not stood with this president, and his job isn't done, and our assignment's not done. And the Lord sent a plague that struck their agriculture. And so their livelihood was interrupted. And God said, is it time for you to build your project when my house lies in ruins? What did they have to build? It was the temple for the nation. God wants a house for America. He wants a church for America. I'm telling you, this is what's happening. And then they rose up, and the Bible says they had an awakening. They had a stirring, the visitation of God as they worked. Now we're at the work. We're at the work, and it's not going to stop. So God has a church that he wants. And then we're going to see the next part of the code, the Nehemiah part, the building of the walls, the occupying of the gates, the building of the walls, the occupying of the gates. We let the walls collapse all around us. We've been Jonah's running from our assignment because we didn't want to preach the clear truth of what God gave us, and we were just trying to supernatural people in and church growth them in. Well, how did that work? It didn't. At some point, we have to be able to boldly stand and speak the truth. You speak the truth in love. A lot of people think that the loving thing to do is to do nothing. That's not the loving thing to do. That's the stupid thing to do. What you have to do is you have to actually, like the angel said when they got the jailbreak, go and stand in the temple and speak all the words of this life. There's a lot more words to this life than just how to go to heaven when you die. And there's a word about marriage. There's a word about family. There's a word about government. There's a word about justice. There's a word about economics. There's a word about race. And there's a word about unity. There's a word about the division. There's a word about corruption. And the word of the Lord is going to begin to come forth in a fresh way. Remember the code. It's God's chaos code. We're watching the code. It's not just in the United States. The code is happening. And the code is working right now. It's happening in Europe. It's happening right now in the Asia-Pacific Rim. God's people are rising up. There is a global activity happening. And I want you guys to be fully informed. And I want you to get involved with this awakening that's taking place. Because the awakening happens to those that are engaged with God's project, not those that are just seeking God. And we have to actually seek him until we find him. And when we find him, and he says, build my house. Occupy your gates. You know why? Because once the awakening happens and you start to occupy, the next step is sheep nations. There's going to be goat nations. There's going to be sheep nations. And Jesus was promised nations for his inheritance. I know that this isn't a popular message because everybody wants to get raptured and go to heaven, but nobody gets a free pass until God has what he wants. And the Lord said, all authority in heaven and earth has been given unto me. Go. Therefore, all authority has been. It's not going to be given to him. Not after Jesus makes a deal with the Antichrist. All authority is already given to him. What we're going to have is the collision of two kingdoms, the collision of two spirits. And the awakening comes to those that are willing to do what God called them to do. Does that make sense? So share this with your friends. Share this with other people, because the chaos is happening. But there's an order, there's a structure, there's a symmetry, there's a way. The tumblers go, and it unlocks the awakening for God's people. It's exciting, it really is. And the Spirit of the Lord is upon America right now. We certainly don't deserve to go on longer. We don't deserve to influence the world the wrong way. But the Lord isn't finished with this country. And if the Church of the living God is going to stand up in unity and decree the decree and walk together in this, then I believe that we're going to be able to determine what happens next. The fate of America isn't up to the news media. The fate of America is going to be in the hands of the Christians. And Christians, a remnant, can make the difference. Let us rise and build. Let us rise and engage. Let us rise and occupy. And let us see nations that are going to come to the inheritance of the Lord in our lifetime, and great harvests that is going to come about in Jesus' mighty name. Make sense to you? God's chaos code. You can get it now. I'll talk to you soon. Hey, if you liked this video today, you could help me out by leaving some comments. And, you could vote up this video. Just give me a like sign and click on like so that I know if this is working for you. And also share it with your friends, because our entire movement is based upon people sharing ideas with other people. And if you want to be regularly notified about these broadcasts, then you want to subscribe so that you'll be able to get the latest material as soon as it comes out.